So I'm Adrian Park, and welcome to the first Contractors Corner of 2024. It's a big day. With me today, founder of Contractor AI, master roofer,
Ooh.
the AI robot whisperer,
Oh, good.
looking like he just came off of an MTV set, and the only person I know with a power name that chooses not to use it, John James Carter.
I like it.
All right. So it's our first live stream of 2024. And there are so many things we want to talk about today. Um, I thought, so I'm going to share to start us off. Um, so for those who haven't watched us before, Jay runs a 8-figure, very successful roofing business in the Greater Toronto area, and has done that for 23 years. However, his team runs the business, and that's why he's on here with you and me today. I ran a masonry restoration business in Western Pennsylvania. Took that from losing $100,000 a year in the 3 years previously, a year, to netting $1 million and having all sorts of fun and success. So we're here to talk about planning. What should we do to start the year? So here we are. We're contractors, and it's 2024. However, for folks that do a lot of work exterior, it's a little bit of a lean time because winter's a tough time, right? And when I came into the business, so we were obviously mason restoration is an exterior envelope trade, and that was a new thing to me because I was new to the industry, and I was like, wait, we don't work for 3 months? Like, what the hell? Um, and I know some people might think that's really stupid watching right now. Like, well, of course, they don't work for 3 months. But I didn't know that. I didn't that didn't occur to me until like Thanksgiving of that first year, and that first year was rough, like really rough. And every winter, in fact, for me personally, I had to go without pay again and again and again. It was rough, and uh, I ended up using the time a lot, and maybe we'll talk about that a little bit more as we get into this today. And so I ended up really looking forward to it. But you know, I think it's really like kind of like A or B for a lot of contractors. So for you, you've spent the time planning. I spent the time planning it. The off season for me. Now we did get some really nice winter jobs over those 7 years, but it was, and we made a lot of money on those jobs. And it was great, but like when we didn't have a big winter job, I used the opportunity to plan and train and really think about what we were going to do for the year and the next year and so on. And so I think that, you know, I think it's a tough time for a lot of folks out there because it's
Mhm.
like, ooh, like we got to get, got to try to get through it and like screen, like basically pester your customers to get those payments in and squeeze and maybe call your vendors and ask your vendors if you can, like, I'll get you the payment. I know I did a lot of that in the first couple of years. So, so we're going to get right into this today. Jay, you know, let's talk about, so obviously there's some folks that are like where this is a tough time of year. I don't
Mhm.
know that let's focus on that as much as like, so for those that are planning right now, maybe can we talk to them and
Yeah.
help them? Because I think that one, I think sometimes it's like when you're thinking about planning, it's one of those things that can be very overwhelming because you go, well, I
Yeah.
mean, we wanted a sales number, and then and then you start thinking about your sales, and then you're like, gosh, we got to get some leads, and we didn't get as many leads, or they were a lot of garbage leads, and then you
Right.
start thinking,
So,
then I got to close more jobs, and so you start. I think as soon as I'm just from my experience working with contractors and also being one, even as someone who's pretty good at strategic planning, if I can say that 3 times fast, it was still overwhelming because then you start going to this like daisy chain of like this, then this, then this, then this. So let's start off and maybe help
Yeah.
guys
So,
and ladies that are planning. Where should people be
so
starting right now?
okay. So we got to really think of two sides of this, right? So one is the guy that is working for himself, still on the tools, kind of,
Okay.
at
Right.
that starting level. And
Yeah.
I'll give you a system that's very easy there. It's more personal planning than it is, business planning and stuff like that. And I want to be very clear about some things, okay?
Okay.
When you start to scale a business, all right? So when you have a team, all right, three or more,
And when
I
you say
want you
team, do you mean like in the field or in the office or
So
both?
ideally, you would have at least an admin in your office or somebody
Okay.
that's, along those lines. And you have field staff. So let's hypothetically call them departments or divisions, whatever you want to call them.
Sure.
Okay.
Great. Yeah.
The importance of planning goes up exponentially when you're running a business,
Yeah.
where it's, a low, like you don't have a lot of staff and stuff like that. It's relatively easy. It's more planning
Right.
yourself and getting yourself
Right.
in line and knowing what
Right.
you're going to take action because you're the one that's doing the hard lifting, heavy
Yeah.
lifting. Okay.
Yep. Hmm.
Now, that is a trap that kept me trapped for a long time, is that
Which part is a
taking
trap?
that to scale. So you end up having to plan basically with yourself.
Yeah.
You have to be more internally planning your operations and making goals by yourself and really
Yeah.
kind of picking out targets. Now, here's the problem that happens, and I'm just going to warn anybody that might be between,
Okay.
being that guy,
Warning.
right?
Warning. Warning.
And
Yeah.
starting to have and develop a real team or scaling. Okay. So we're talking about 4 or 5 people. Maybe you got an estimator, a salesperson, whatever. Okay.
Right. Yep.
Your what you have to do now is more from the manager, managing your business,
Right.
managing
Right.
problems, managing, and you have to very quickly put on a new hat that is a leadership CEO hat. And I'll explain to you what I
Okay.
mean and what the differences are. So
Right.
planning for me is two objectives. Two objectives that would be, hey, looking at these numbers last quarter, I want to increase sales in this division. So I'll give you the exact OKR that we're using, or I use an OKR system. You'll hear me kind of refer to it.
Yeah. Can you
But
say
I'm going
what
to give the
OKR
top line
is?
objective.
Can
Yeah.
you just,
So it's
yeah. Okay.
objectives and key results. Okay.
Yeah.
If you think about it, it can be used at a personal level. It can be used at a high level. But essentially, this is what Fortune 500 companies like Google, they all use a system like this because it
Right.
allows us to be objective based leaders. Okay. So
Okay.
an objective is, this is the big vision or the big view in the next 3 months. So for my team, it was to generate an additional 900,000 in B2B business. Okay. So
Okay.
we were running a campaign, and for my sales team, that was what it was. There was a
Okay.
second objective, is to reduce steel waste. So waste that's
Okay.
unaccounted or unbilled for,
Yeah.
down below a certain point. So we wanted to
Okay.
reduce it by 15%. Our
Got
waste
it.
was very high.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you exactly how it does. That's where my position in my role stopped. I stopped right there. Is that, here's me. I'm going to make the statement and say, here's the objectives. And now
Yeah.
I'm going to look at my team and go, okay, I'd like you to now create your own objective to how you're going to contribute to making this happen. Okay.
Right.
And we're going to talk about it, but now it becomes, we go to, a division or, a role even in your company. So sales,
Yeah.
how are you going to help me complete this objective? Well, we're going to do this and that, we're going to do that. Okay. That sounds good. All right. I'm not going to get as much involved, but then they're going to start to put, and this is where the key is here. They have to start to put KPIs and key results underneath those categories that tell me how they're going to get to that point.
So you're not telling them,
That's right. That's right.
yeah, I want, I want
That's right.
this exact thing. You
That's
say,
right.
here's the bigger picture, more
Here's
specific
the big view.
target.
Yep.
How can we get there?
That's right. So now what I'm doing is I'm forcing them, okay, to move beyond just being a manager that's being told what to do by upper
Yeah.
management. So you're creating that rate, and I'm basically giving everybody a limited space to prove themselves out as being their own person. They can think of their
Right.
own solutions. They
Right.
are in charge of that objective and those key results. Now, here's how I keep them accountable and why it makes it so easy. Okay. Because I don't give
Okay.
a shit how they
Wait,
get to the
it's
objective.
easy?
It's much,
It's easy.
it is wildly easier than any other type of planning you're going to do. And here, and I'll tell you
Okay.
why again,
Yeah.
because
Please.
when you teach somebody, okay, to effectively plan for themselves, to effectively write almost a mini business plan for themselves of how they're going
Right.
to do it, and you get them to go through the process. Okay, number one is you're empowering them
Yeah.
versus managing them, which is or micromanaging. So, for example, for most bosses out there, because they do the initial planning first, I call all the shots, and we all have this vision, like the director being like Mr. Wizard behind the thing.
The
I don't
curtain.
remember what it
Yeah.
was, but the curtain. That's it.
Where's
That's
of
the
Oz?
word.
Yeah.
Right. So when we have that vision, though, that doesn't work at scale. It does not function because you
Right.
need leaders to
Right.
run and operate your business. You need people, executives that know what they're
Yeah.
doing and that you can give over control to. And here's the thing, I give up control. All right. And this is the key. And this is the big difference. I don't
Yeah.
want the control. Do you know why?
Right.
Because
I
it
have a
equals
couple
time.
ideas. Yeah, but go ahead.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's my time. If I
Right.
have control, I'm also accountable to the outcome.
Right.
Where if I'm giving up that control and I'm saying, okay, I agree with that. Now I'm going to move my position into coach. I'm not going to tell. So it's not my job to be right. I don't
Right.
try to be the smartest guy in the room. I don't try to be right. My job's to get it right. At the end of the day, it's going to be
Yeah.
right.
Right.
Okay. But we're going to let people make micro mistakes. They're going to struggle, but they're going to learn. And more importantly, they're going to know black and white. They did or they didn't. What did we
Right.
learn from this?
Right.
Like there's a whole process that goes to it, but you're developing your people, you're leading
Yeah.
your staff, you're leading people to think for themselves. And
Yeah.
that's the difference between managing and leading. When you want to
Yeah.
manage a business, you're not letting people think for themselves. You're telling them what to do,
Right.
right? You're directing them what to do. And a lot of times this ends up below the line. Okay. So, I always try
Below
to
the
think
line.
of, yeah. So I'm going to explain this to you. So there's
Okay.
two types of ways of looking at things. All right. So you use the example of, oh shit, I've got all these leads. I got to get all these leads in, blah, blah, blah. And like, I've got all these roadblocks. Okay.
Right. Right.
I would call that thinking below the line thinking. So if I'm in front of an audience and I'm concerned about those things, what is my audience concerned about? Finding leads, blah, blah, blah. I've just
Right.
transferred my concern to them below the line.
Right.
Now, here's an
Right.
above the line way of looking at it. Hey, guys, this is where we need to be. All
Right.
right. And we're going to do it by this point. How are we getting there?
Right.
Right. I'm not concerned about not making the target or the goal. I'm going to lead my team and give them the vision, give them the
Yeah.
big picture, and
Right.
you'll be amazed how quickly you can move and scale as a business because now people feel empowered versus
Right.
feeling managed. And again,
Yeah.
for A players or even really top MB players,
Yeah.
you can pull the leadership out of them by doing this. So when they're accountable and they know they're in charge of it, two things are going to happen. Number one, they're going to fail and fail miserably and they'll hate it.
Right.
That's not the
Right.
person that should have been in the spot. Okay.
Right.
So you
Right.
know, and there's no explaining it. It's black and white. You're not the bad guy
Right.
either. That
Right.
person's not capable of the role you want them to play. All right.
Right.
Or two, they're going to start to really blossom in front of you, take control. All right.
Yep.
And that's what you want.
Yes.
That you want
Right.
them to think about every detail and take over the ownership you previously had for
Right.
that thing. So if it's growing sales, great. I have a salesperson. Too often I see and I hear, all right, and I've done myself. I hired
Right.
the salesperson, and guess what I'm doing every day? Hey, did you get that quote done? Did you get this?
Yeah.
Did you do that? Are you
Yeah.
doing this? Are you doing that? Like,
Yeah.
that's not, if you hired someone that can't plan their own day and can't
Right.
do the job that you expect from them, then you have the wrong person in place, number one.
Right. Yeah.
But
Just
you
yes.
may have the right person, but you're a shitty boss. Right.
That's
And
true.
all it
Yeah.
takes is this below the line approach where we're micromanaging, we're standing over because we need to have that control. Right.
Yeah.
And that's, again, it really, if we're looking at, how to get out of your business, and I hear it all the time, it's as much a problem as the owner themselves. Okay. They get in their way. And I've certainly done it. I've been a boulder in my own business. When I
Yeah.
finally got out of the way and
Yeah.
learned how to lead my team versus controlling my team,
Right.
everything changed. Okay. Number one is you start to really change the way you think about problems and solutions. So
Yeah.
I've used the phrase, I'm not trying to be right, because I know a lot of times I won't be. But
Right.
if I'm wrong, who's it on? Right.
Right.
I'm only going to take ownership of the things that I know I can that are in my realm. So
Yeah.
if I'm not wanting to be involved with any of the operations and stuff, I'm not putting my hand in there
Yeah.
to get slapped. I'm going to
Yeah.
let my people micro fail, and I say that because it's going to happen. People learn through failing and struggling and trying, and
Absolutely.
you build the
Absolutely.
confidence in them
Yeah.
through it. But where
Yeah.
OKRs come in, and let me just where
Yeah.
OKRs come in is because you're now forcing them to think for themselves and
Mhm.
map out their plan, add the KPI. So how are we going to measure this? All right. And it's a practice you do on every quarter. It's every 3 months. And here's a specific reason why we do it in 90-day terms. And I'll explain to
Okay.
you exactly why. So
Yeah.
when we want to run a 90-day planning quarter, so anything that we're talking about here is ultimately going to involve a change. We need to change from this
Right.
to that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it
Hmm.
takes 90 days for most human beings, okay, to
Right.
get something into a pattern or become a habit.
Right.
So at the beginning of the 30 days, it's going to be rough. All right. People are going to
Yes.
struggle. They're going to be, you need to
Right.
manage that change that's occurring. All right. And
Yeah.
that's where a lot of the talk about, are you thinking above the line or below the line? Right. Are
Right.
we in scarcity or are we in abundance? Where are we thinking at? And are you being a leader or are you trying to manage or control a situation? Because if you're trying to manage or control a multi-million dollar business, you can't. No one person can actually
Oh
do that.
no.
And
Right.
I'm gonna be honest with you, and you don't want to. Because
No.
listen, it's no fun.
No.
If you want to be the dictator of a business that size, number one, you're not gonna attract the right people. Okay. And I always want to hire up. I want to find people way better at something than
Right.
I could ever imagine
Right.
being. That is my ultimate
Yes.
goal, and it should be everyone's goal here.
Yes.
That that the only way you're going to retain those people is by focusing on your leadership, by being able to understand what
Right.
your emotions are and how you're feeling, and getting out of the way a lot of the times.
Yeah.
And this is a system that I've implemented. It's the simplest way. And then I know the results, because there's going to be days when things don't work. There's going to be days when things feel broken.
Right.
And all you're there for at that point, if you're playing a true CEO role or an executive role, is to coach your team. You can't run in and put out that fire. If you start putting out fires and jumping in and thinking for your team, A, you're not going to develop anybody, or
Yeah.
B, you're going to find out very quickly you have the wrong person in the wrong spot, right? So
Right.
what would you rather? I think both outcomes are are good enough. I'd
Yeah.
rather find out quickly going through these things that somebody's not
Yeah.
suited for it,
Yeah.
remove them because it's the
Yeah.
ultimate test. All
Right.
right. And here's the more attractive part for anyone that's at this stage of their business and really stressed about planning. Don't plan. You've already done it. You've been doing it. You got to that point,
Right.
all right, where you had to painstakingly plan. Take that whole process that you've done and systemize it. Okay. So
Right.
systemize it. Think about each department or each
Yeah.
division or role. And now get that person that's in that role to think for themselves. Like, and you will be absolutely incredibly amazed,
Yeah.
provided you've hired half decent people, of
Right.
how quickly problems can be solved and where the vision of the company ends up, because your job again is to provide vision. It's to look ahead and say, hey, this is where we're going to be,
Yeah.
and this is why I know that's going to happen. Over time, what happens is as your team learns, so I've had the issue come up a few times where somebody's bet big, I'm going to do this, overpromised and way under delivered. Okay.
Right.
Now I'm going to come in and you tell me what's above the line or below the line. Okay.
Right.
I'm going to come in and say, hey man, we missed some objectives, key results. What happened here? Right? Because you made the goals. I didn't, you told me what you were going to do and by
Right.
when and where. And
Right.
like, it was very specific, right?
Yeah.
What happened? Like, it's a black and white conversation. You either did or you didn't. Okay.
Right.
Either he's going to tell me what he learned. All right. Or he's going to tell me how he's going to improve it. He's going to improve his efficiency in calling shots, which you
Right.
want. All right.
Right.
Or again, he's just going to crumble in and fall out.
And he's
Now,
going to give you a lot of excuses as to
right.
why. Yeah. Right.
So here's the other side. Or you can continue to do dictatorship, top-down management. All right. We missed our quarterly goal this quarter. Okay. It happened because of this guy, or it happened because of that guy. This guy didn't do what he was supposed to do. This guy didn't, like, who the hell is going to own that? It's you. Just
Right.
now you're speaking down. Shoulda, coulda, woulda, shoulda. Like, you've
Yeah.
just set the worst example for your team, and there is no opportunity to coach from that position. There's no opportunity to lead
Yeah.
because you've already lowered yourself
Well,
into the
yeah.
accountability of that happening, yes or no, right?
And I think to that point, that's where we've got to get out of our own way,
That's
and
right.
we've got to be very honest with ourselves,
Hmm.
because not all the time, but if a lot of your people are giving you excuses, it may not be because they're bad employees, but are
Hmm.
you doing the same thing, right? when they
That's
when
right.
they come to
They're
you, do you
mimicking it.
take
They're mimicking it.
responsibility? Right,
That's
do you
right.
take responsibility, or do you
Hmm.
blame it on the sub, or do you blame it on the GC, or do you blame it on the owner, or do you blame it on
That's right.
them, right?
That's right. So
Because
again, I think the most important thing to keep in mind with all of this is for people who want to run a scaled company. A lot of people like the idea of it. Okay. And we see
right.
this day in and day out. There's a common theme that ends up occurring is that once they get uncomfortable, all right, because
Hmm.
they're growing or something, they have the tendency to kind of self-sabotage, throw themselves under the
Right.
bus, and they get concerned with people, this guy's not doing his role, and he starts to micromanage and takes
Yeah.
away all of the vision and all of the leadership and all of the positive things that get people motivated, takes it all
Right.
away, comes in,
Right.
screams, throws his hands up, makes comments to his staff, woulda, shoulda, coulda, you did this, you did, like, that is not the way to ever scale a business. And this is why guys stay stuck for years and
Right.
years. And here's the other point of it. If you start to understand how people overall, and I get to be, this is the funnest part of my job and why I truly do it, is that I
Okay.
completely buy in and understand how people manage change, how they emotionally go
Yeah.
through the curve of change. And I've seen it over and over again. I can time it on my watch. If I change your toothpaste today, you're going to have the same experience. Every human being is hardwired on planet Earth to go through it. If
Yeah.
you know that, okay, and you're emotionally intelligent enough to keep control of that, you'll start to find that this whole time that you haven't been achieving these big goals and these big ideas was exactly because you didn't manifest this. You didn't make that happen,
Right.
and your team's going to follow suit. If you think
Yeah.
small, your team's going to think
Yeah.
small. And it's
Yeah.
and there's no hiding that. So when it comes to team planning and objectives, I want to kind of give you a little bit more structure to how this could work and
Yeah.
how even the most controlling person can learn to be a better leader using
Yeah.
something like this in place. So and again, I've worked with tons of micromanagers. I've been a micromanager, and it was purely out of fear and discomfort of change.
Right.
Right?
Right.
That is
Yeah.
that is what it's always come back down to, is I'm scared. I haven't done this before. I feel like an imposter or blah blah blah, or
Yeah.
like this is moving too fast. There's got to be something I can control in this
Yeah.
process. And I want to tell you, it's just not
Y-
reality, right?
Well, I think too, like, so, you know, when I came into it, I was a very like type A, let's get them, let's kill, and the thing that I found, and I remember, so I went to Tony Robbins Business Mastery in January of 2017, came back just jacked, and I was excited, and I was like, we're gonna do $3.5 million this year, and we had done 1.7. That was the biggest year in company history in 39 years,
Mhm.
and uh, I wish today that I had a camera in the room to have the faces and the reactions of
Yeah.
everybody in the room, because it was everything from shock to you've got to be fucking kidding me, get the fuck out of here.
Hmm.
They were not excited about that.
No.
And so the thing that I remember feeling a lot, because we didn't do 3.5 million. Now we did do it 2 years later, but the thing that I remember feeling was a lot of pressure, because I had come up with this
Mhm.
goal, and
It's on
now,
you.
right, and now if we don't hit it, everyone looks at me like, "Yeah, I told you so." These little a holes, right?
Hmm.
So it was a lot of pressure in it, and then it kind of put me at like this at odds relationship with my team, which really wasn't my team, but that's a whole other conversation. But it was, so I had this immense pressure, And then of course the owner's looking at me like, okay, are we going to do 3.5 million?
Right.
Um, so that was very difficult. Fast forward to 2 years later, and I had to learn some really hard lessons, and I put together a leadership team.
Mhm.
And that leadership team wasn't just front office people, right? I got the top people, my top producers, right?
Mhm.
Top contributors from the field, and I pulled them into like a leadership team, and and they were shocked. Like they were. It was so funny because they're like, "What is this? What are we doing?" And then I explained it to them, and that was one of the best decisions I ever made, because
Mhm.
just like you said, so I would give them a lot of detail, right? So they always knew what our budgets were on
Mhm.
time, on materials, on equipment. And so they managed that stuff for me. I didn't have to show up on the job site every day and go, whoa, why is this machine still here? Or why did we use X amount of gallons of this? Didn't have to do any of that stuff. None of it. Right.
Mhm.
And, it was so, like, I remember it was one of the most satisfying things I've done professionally was working with that group of men and women, because I mean, first of all, we printed money. I mean,
Mhm.
printed money. And you know that because we worked together. But
Mhm.
it was also so cool to see, and I'm saying this specifically for maybe like, the men and women out there that are like, you want to get there, but like you just heard what I said about the goal thing, and maybe you've had that experience, or you don't know how to get there. And we're going to talk about that. But but I want you to know what it's like to be on the other side of it, which
Mhm.
is it's so cool because your people grow, and I mean, they were so engaged, and then they were coming to me with ideas like, what if we
Right.
did this, what if we did this, and they came up with some incredible, smart innovation stuff, and I was like, we need to do this, and we put it into the business. And then they
Just
felt like, I mean, you could just see like they were glowing with like excitement because they came up with that. I didn't tell them, hey, I had this idea, or I saw this thing online, can you do this, right? I
Mhm.
didn't push it to them. They brought it to me, and it was brilliant, and I was like, yes, we
Right.
got to do that. Right.
Right.
And
So,
some
and
things
that's
I was like, well, we can't do that yet because we don't have the money. But like, so you have
yeah.
to make decisions. But like, it was the coolest thing ever, getting to see my people grow and
That's
learn. And like, I mean, it was
here's the
amazing.
here's the
Amazing.
thing. Here's the thing that I've seen. And by the way, I put OKRs in literally hundreds of businesses and got them using it. So it's simple, first of all. And I want to go into the structure a bit, but it's also something that you have to understand in terms of managing a team and leading a team is you need to get buy-in. All right. If you
Right.
want to go in and be a dictator and dictate to a team, then you are now accountable
That's
for
how they're
the
going to
whole outcome.
respond.
That's how they're
Yeah.
going to respond. And you're going to
Yeah.
actually make people afraid to make
Yes.
mistakes. When that
Right.
happens, that's game over. You will never get out
Yep.
of your operation. You will have nothing but people that need you for every decision, everything, because they're afraid of making a mistake. That is the worst, most toxic culture that you can get.
Yeah.
And that's where people feel stuck. But now let's flip it on the other side and go, okay, you know what? I'm going to control the vision. I'm going to
Right.
control the big picture view for my own control, needs. I'm going to make sure that I own the structure. I don't give a shit about owning
Right.
the ideas. I don't give a shit
Right.
about the other
Right.
things. I'm going to own the structure, and I'm going to make sure that I'm holding the scoreboard and not on
Right.
the field playing the game. All
Yeah.
right? That's for them
That's
to
right.
do. All right? I keep myself out. I don't want to be a referee. I don't want to be
Yeah.
I own the scoreboard.
So I think that's really hard, Jay, for people. And I think,
Absolutely.
maybe I've got some ideas on that. And because again, you and I are both, I think, come from like a command and control,
Hmm.
so we don't lose. And we both had to learn to let go.
A
And
big time. It's all about letting
it's
go.
hard. So
Very
first
hard.
of all, it's really hard. And if you're still controlling everything and you're listening to us and like, telling us to go F ourselves, that's fair. But like I'm saying, and Jay, you agree with me, it's hard. It's not
Yeah.
easy. And it's not like a 2 day, 3 day, 4 day, 5 week thing.
This
It
is yeah,
takes time.
this it takes time. But
Yeah.
here again, it's also about reprogramming the outcome that you're not happy with now, right? So if you're not happy
Yeah.
with the growth
Right.
with where you are starting 2024 and it's time for a change, this is the easiest way that we can do it, all right? The easiest thing to do is first of all fix yourself. Okay. If
Yes.
you have control issues, if you have those fears, if you have that trauma, like cool, let's figure out how to work with it until it's gone, until we eliminate
Right.
it. Because I certainly
Right.
had all these things. And when things don't work out or you get screwed over, we all get our backs up and we're afraid to try again. Okay.
Right.
This is
Right.
where, and I'm gonna just share my screen so we can quickly go through just kind of how this works. All right. So
Yeah.
let's put this into practical, usable things today. Okay.
Yeah. How
So
can
first
so
of all,
yeah,
yeah,
I was gonna say, Jay, just real quick. So I think, maybe if we could answer one question, because I know that people I talk to ask this question, and I'm sure some of our clients are asking, like, what's a realistic goal? How do they set a real, not some pie in the sky thing, but like, can we help them with this?
yeah,
Get that answer. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, we can go through the smart goal framework. I mean, that's a principle to this.
Yes.
But a realistic goal, I'll explain to you. When I look at objectives, I'm making it a big view. I'm looking at my vision for the company. Where do I want to be in 1 to 3 to 5 years? If you don't have
Right.
that, it's hard to do anything. Okay. So if
Agreed.
you hold yourself accountable, like, hey, in 1 year I'll be here, like you got to get that out of your head and share that with your team. Don't write
Right.
it down and throw it into
Right.
some business plan somewhere.
Yep.
That's not how they're used. Okay. That's how you guide this team when you're not there. All right.
Right.
And then you have to test that vision on your team. Do they believe in it? Do they buy in on it? Do they
Right.
actually feel like this is like, again, if they don't, then you need to look at that vision. And again, it gets back down to reality because I'll tell you,
Right.
again, this comes down to it's not you personally that's going to get you to that goal. It's going to be you
Right.
and your team
That's right.
and the people
That's
you
right.
surround yourself with.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's not for you. And then again, think about it. If you have this out of the way and you've got the big clear vision where you should be focusing, all right? Let's break this down now into an objective. Every quarter, we're going to plan with our team. Why? Because teams need leadership. They need
Right.
to know what pathway, where do we want to go? What
Right.
do we like? And you hold the keys to that.
Right.
So when we create objectives, we want to look at everything in 3 months, all right? And these are meant to be something you can very clearly answer yes or no, black or white. We did or we didn't, and it's just that way. Now, I've
Right.
always been in the habit that I set my objectives just slightly above what we can achieve. Okay.
Okay.
So this is
All right.
where when we talk about setting realistic goals, I know what's slightly unrealistic because I've been
Right.
through it over and over. It becomes a
Right.
habit. We do it every time. I know who hits it, like who's 70, 80%. And it's very trackable. It's a simple, but a system that you want to keep your team online with. Okay.
So slightly above, not what I did, which was double.
Right. Right. But
Slightly
again,
above.
yeah, and you have to you
It's
here's the
important.
other trick with it.
Yeah.
Right. So once you start to put this into practice, the first time you do it with your team, no, you will be leading objectives and like force
Right.
feeding key results. Don't expect it to be perfect. Go for the
Right.
80-20 rule here. You only want it to be about 80% in anything you do. Don't try to
Right.
be perfect. Don't try
Right.
to, and don't be that upset if you don't hit it. That's okay. It's a learning experience. It's meant to be flexible. Okay.
Yeah.
So now let's say that we get through and we do them twice. Okay. People start to understand a little bit more. And by the third time, the third round of that, so we're talking 9 months into the year, you know exactly what your team can output. So think about
Yeah.
the guys that have been struggling to get that thing
Right.
implemented for months and
Right.
years and like never got it done. Why are you putting that pressure on yourself to do that thing
Right.
when if you broke it up into bite-sized pieces and divided it amongst the team, two things are going to happen. Number one is they're going to take ownership of it and own it.
Yeah.
And that's the most
Right.
powerful thing is because it's not your idea, it was their idea and they bought
Right.
in on it. Now
Right.
we're all on board together. Okay? You want your team to follow and to listen and to do it. Don't try to command. Get them to use their own heads on how they were going to get to that. You make the
Right.
adjustments as necessary, but you set very clear results. Okay? So if we
Okay.
were to do this objective for the next 3 months and we'll just, kind of look at it like how do we know that we got our objective? Okay. And this is about how you do these things so they're effective. Okay. So
Okay.
we're going to measure it. So for example, we wanted to increase or have 900,000, very easy to measure, isn't it?
Yeah.
We take
Right.
the where we are currently. Did we hit it? Yes or no? That's a very easy thing for the team to follow and to know that they are.
Yeah.
Now, every single week, I'm going to have a stand-up meeting with this key. You don't just set this and forget it. Okay.
Right.
You're going to have a stand-up meeting with your team where you ask, what is it I can do to help you get to your objective? What are you struggling with? How
Right.
do I support you? Or other team members, hey, they need help from you. That's your job to kind of, support your team, but don't
Yeah.
get involved, right? Don't
Right.
don't do the thing. Unless you have your own objectives and you've done your own key results, that's entirely up to you. Okay.
Right. Right.
Because you can use this personally to plan as well. And that's what I was going to get to. But we're going to look at it and then we're going to run this. And here's the other thing that I've learned to do with this is it will look at certain times. So someone comes in and does their stand-up meeting. They haven't got any of their key results achieved yet. And we're talking we're in 30 days or less. Okay.
Right.
Whole team knows it every single week. Clock is ticking. All of a sudden you see, they tie it on, they get that piece done, or they don't. Right?
Right.
There's really,
Right.
again, they set that goal, they set those targets. So they're holding themselves accountable, you're holding them accountable. This is a very good environment, and it's very positive for people that buy into it. The people who don't, you don't want on your team anyways. Okay. Somebody who
Right.
does not want to be held accountable to a result, all right, should not be on your team. Period.
Right.
Right? They
Right.
reject this or anything. Now, here's where the leadership comes in. So when you're done the sprint or you're done the 3-month period, you're going to evaluate. So a lot of people have problems doing evaluations of their staff, right? We've talked
Right.
about this a lot where
Yeah.
the traditional kind of system doesn't really reflect on what somebody's contributing at these, at scale and at level. It's hard and difficult to kind of properly do those reviews because you're not with that person every day. You're not, and a manager may not see, but this allows individuals to show their contributions in front of the entire team, in
Right.
front of everyone. It's out in the open. This is like running an open book policy. There's no dispute on who's killing it and who's not, right? And
Right.
who's excelling at something and who's not. So now as we evaluate the effectiveness, and here's the other thing I see a lot is a company will put all their energy and time into getting something built or getting something in place. Oh,
Right.
we need a CRM. I love that one. They half-ass put this thing together. Nobody knows
Right.
how to use it. No one knows how to
Right.
implement it. We haven't thought
Right.
about all the other pieces. And
Right.
then 6 months goes by and it's completely failed. They're back to
Right.
spreadsheets. Why
Right.
is that happening? And how
Right.
can that company turn that around and get everybody involved so
Yeah.
that everybody, like, losing the battle by yourself as an owner sucks. Okay.
Yeah.
We're already kind of isolated. Losing the battle with the team, all right, that doesn't buy into the whole thing, that's exponentially harder. But,
Right.
I'll tell you, it's a lot less impactful when your team loses, but at least they're taking the ownership of the loss, and we're already working
Right.
towards a better outcome because now
Right.
we're all sharing that, right? Nobody likes to
Right.
lose, right? But we all like to
Right.
win. So again, when these things do occur,
But
and
there's a
you're gonna have
different
times when you've lost,
yeah.
and
Well,
you're gonna have times when you've won.
right. But I mean, to your point, that was another experience I had as well, um, where we had some jobs that didn't go the way we wanted them to go, and it was very different with them. It was very different from the way it was in the first couple of years and the last couple of years when a job didn't go well. I had so much more feedback and so much more. We were working together, right? Instead
Mhm.
of instead of me going and being, hey, what happened? What happened? What happened? Why do we? That was like it was sort of like an all hands on deck experience, which
Mhm.
I mean, it didn't. I still losing still sucks, but we got better, a lot better. We made improvements more quickly because
Yep.
everybody was rowing, right?
Absolutely. And you
Whereas with a lot of folks, I think they're kind of losing alone, like you said, and
right.
they're just out there on an island, and because there are people like, well, it's your business, so at least I
Yep.
got paid,
Big
as long as I get a paycheck, and
and and
that's not
that's
entirely the employee's fault, right?
right. That again, and this is something that can be fixed, right? So
Yeah,
I have
sure.
seen some incredible transformations in clients' businesses and my own businesses when they start to adapt to this. So I'll give you a classic example of where these are very effective. So we have a company that's scaled or grown in the last year or so, and they're all running around. The owner continues to take on projects that never get finished, right? CRM's half implemented, and he's working harder than he's ever worked. Okay. He's got a brand new team, and they feel lost. They feel how he
Yeah.
feels. Okay.
Right.
And this is the saddest thing. Like, so then you have your A players kind of like they're killing it out in the field in the
Yeah.
production, and your management is struggling because they're brand new.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
How do you pull somebody out of that and get them to recognize that the leadership is what the team in the production. If you can lead a production team, all right, don't worry about sales. Don't worry about, like, they will
Right.
come. Like, if you've got those
Right.
mechanisms in place,
Right.
and if you can lead by recognizing a problem, identifying a solution, all right, making it clear to everyone in the organization what the problem is, how we're going to fix this.
Right.
Okay, very little is going to and over time especially very little is going to be able to upset the entire company, right? When you really get into
Right.
this practice, because again, do we know we either won money or we didn't, right? What are we going to
Right.
do to change that? It becomes a habit, right? And this is really where I'm trying to drive it home in terms of building these healthy habits even before you grow. Okay, so we can
Yeah.
take this and break it down to how I would personally do it, right? So
Okay.
let's say my objective is to increase MRR for a DFY offer. Okay, we'll use my
DFY.
done for you,
Okay.
right? Similar to what we offer here. No,
Right.
no connection. Okay,
Right.
so the key result would be, I want to establish a client retention churn rates, right? That would be a key result. I need to have that data.
Okay. Churn. Can you explain what churn is,
Yeah,
please?
churn is when somebody leaves an offer. Like, when they, by the way, we have a very low churn, so I'm happy about that. We were effective in this targeting, but a
So
churn
churn
rate
is
is
when
something that
they
an
stop being a
owner would want
customer.
to keep the track of.
Yeah. Okay.
Correct. So if you were to put it in the service-based business, when you lose customers, all right,
Right.
you're going to look at that churn rate and lifetime value and all those things. Those are
Right.
indicators of how well you're delivering
It's
your service and how happy
how
people.
many. So how many leave versus how many stay?
Correct. Right.
Got it. Okay.
So the key result or the outcome in order to achieve this is establish a client retention churn rate. So like we need to have a measurement. So now below that, we're going to have some tasks. Okay. The team's going to come up. Well, how am I going to do that? Now we're going to break that problem
Right.
down. Okay. I know I need to get the established client retention churn rates. I'm going to analyze the historic data. I'm going to look at
Right.
industry data. I'm going to establish the goals: who, when, where, why, and how. Okay. Now it gets
Okay.
granular. So your team's now taking, okay, I'm going to think about this problem. What would we need to do? These
Right.
are the things, and you're going to put your name beside it. This person's
Yeah.
going to put their name beside that one. All right, they're going to put their name beside that. Okay, great. So we've figured out kind of how we're going to do that as a team. We know who's going to be accountable by when, right, to make this thing happen. Now let's go to the next key result: hire a new account manager. Okay, finish an operation delegation, set up hiring process. Like these are key results, but they're now broken down into the more granular, the things we tend to think about as being a way to solve a problem are
Yeah.
usually tasks. So
Right.
like, for example, I need to get more leads. Well, that's not really looking at the problem. Why,
Right.
when you take it and break it down into bite-sized pieces for you and your team and allow them to all contribute even in a small way. Okay, great. So what would be step one? Okay, we need to find out how many leads we need, right? we need
Hmm.
to we need to establish those. It forces you to think about how to produce that outcome, and by doing it over and over again with your team, they now learn how to solve their own problems and not come to you with all of these, all of their problems that they could very easily solve themselves. And
Yeah.
again, you're going to see certain people shine, certain people fall off. But now, as people start to take ownership of these tasks and stuff, we start to see the patterns. So I know who's killing it just by going
Yeah.
down the list and saying, oh, well, I can see this person knocked off all these things. They're contributing, all their objectives got achieved. Like,
Right.
again, I can see that from the 30,000-foot view. I don't have to
Right.
go deep to figure this out. Right. And then over time as well, the managers, leadership, they hold the people in this accountable, and there's ways for people to move up. You're giving a
Hmm.
pathway to how, if you make these contributions, everything's out in the open. It's like playing open book,
Right.
right?
Right.
The whole team is aligned and the vision's clear. The
Yeah.
problems can all be solved. So 10 brains are much better
Like
than one brain
hundred
alone,
percent. 100%.
right?
Hundred
And this
percent.
is exactly how it forces everyone to see. And then from doing this, guess what? Every single one of these things becomes what? A repeatable system. A repeat. We've
Right.
already done it. We've mapped out how we did it. This is like a giant SOP.
Yeah, so I
It's
think, yeah, so I just want to answer something real quick, Jay,
sure.
because again, I think that, like I said, if when we started out this conversation, I think it's well, look, it's not, I think I know, and it's easy for me, not in this, but in other things, you start thinking about, okay, I want this outcome. So I want to do 1 million in sales this year.
Mhm.
And then you go, oh, like, how am I going to do that? Because we immediately go to how, which
Right.
we need to go to how, but
Mhm.
I think one of the gifts in what you were just showing our audience is that it makes the how a very sort of like, paint by numbers, right?
That's right.
So,
Right.
you don't have to think about, you don't have to go, you don't have to pull your hair out. Cause again, look, most contractors, and this is just the truth, because they're great at the work, they're great at some part of the production, or they're great at
Mhm.
sales. They're probably not like strategic planners. So, that's okay, right? There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with you if you can't do that stuff. So, that's why we created this tool, to make it like a paint by numbers thing, where it's like, okay,
Right.
so I want to do, I did $2.5 million this year. I want to do, I want to grow that by another 500,000 or 600,000 or whatever it is. Okay, how do I do that? And then you just
Mhm.
start paint by number. You start going down the list, right?
Right.
What do we need in
So
terms of leads, right? What do we need in terms of how many of those leads are we going to close? How many of
right.
the leads are we going to kick because they're garbage leads, right?
Mhm. So, and again, this results, the outcome of this is you're going to get the right people on the bus that should
Right.
be in those meetings. Okay. You're going to get them aligned. You're going to get them targeted. So they're focused, and you're going
Right.
to have the organization going the right direction instead of going all over the place and everything being out of control and chaos. All right. Because
Right.
that's what happens when companies scale without these kind of structures in place. And
Oh,
you'll
it's
notice they're
madness.
very,
Insanity.
very, it's very straightforward and simple because that's the real art. As you get bigger and things become more complicated, you have to make it simpler. Okay. You have to
Right.
bring a very complex, complicated
Yes.
problem and make it
Yes.
simple for everybody from the top to
Yes.
the bottom to
Right.
understand. Here it
Right.
is. Here's our challenges. And the more you get people involved and the more you lead people through this process, the more confident they're going to become. Even when you fail, you
Yeah.
you are building your confidence. You know what not to do now. It's
Yeah.
documented. You know exactly, okay,
Right.
so now how else are we going to approach this? And here's been lots of times. I mean, I remember vividly knowing a plan was going to fail. All right. Knowing that, like, in my head, but keeping my mouth shut. Okay. And
Right.
this is the ultimate test of if you've really
Yeah.
broke those
That's
chains of
hard.
micromanagement. Because I'm
That's
looking at
hard.
it going, okay, there's only, again, I measured my risk. I know it's not
Right.
going to tank the company. I know it's, but
Right.
I'm
Right.
I'm allowing these managers who have
Yeah.
conviction, who believe in this thing to try it. And even
Yeah.
if I've done it, all I can say is, hey, like I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm gonna lead you and I'm gonna coach you and I'm gonna
Right.
support you all I can. But I want you to know, like when you lock this in, like that's your outcome. So
Yeah.
you be again, even when they fail, now they come back and oh, you were right. But did I go below the line and say you're stupid? This won't
No.
work. We're
Yeah.
not doing that. Shut them down. They don't ever want to contribute again. No, it said, hey, you know what? There's a good opportunity to learn. I would love for you to go
Right.
forward with that. I'd love to see how your outcome would be different than mine. All right. So here's my experience. Here's what I've had. And if they still want to go ahead with that, no problem. I'm here to support you. All right.
Right.
And anything you need to try and do this, I'm happy to provide it for you. And let's continue to keep in touch and
Right.
we'll talk at the stand-up meeting. And then you see them going
Right.
through it and they're like, oh my God, instead of just
Oh
shutting them down.
no.
So right. And I'm going,
Right.
and it's not a I told you so attitude. It's
Right.
above the line going, this is how we learn. It's a
Right.
process, right?
Yep.
We know now what not to do again, and that
Right.
habit's been broken right there and then. If people don't understand what the cause and outcome is of certain decisions, first of all, again, it's not you transferring your knowledge, and people
Right.
don't trust you, right? If you're
Right.
just a micromanager, they're not in generally trusted with
Well,
much,
I
right?
think I think too that, I mean, there is a tremendous value gift in figuring things out for ourselves. And, just to like dip into psychology just for a second, just for a quick second. Don't hope I don't lose anybody. Like, you know, when what's happening when we learn something ourselves, whether it's a huge loss or a huge win, is that experience has like it creates an emotional imprint, right?
Mm-hmm.
Think of, I mean, if I said to you right now, what was your most painful job? You could answer that quickly, right?
Oh, very
You
quickly.
know,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And it's not because it's in here, you get a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It starts in
Right
your
in my gut.
body, yeah, and then it goes to your head. So it
Yeah.
starts here, then it goes to here. And the same thing, if I said, what was your what was like, you know, what was the first time you knew like your company was like this is really going places?
Mm-hmm.
You know that too, and you actually probably don't know it here as much as you know it
It's
here,
so funny you just said
right?
that. You know, when I knew my company was like, when I could finally step away from the operations, it was during an OKR meeting where they never asked
Really?
me once, not once. They never asked me once. And
That's
I was like a
great.
fly on the wall. It was that day, no word of lie. And I think I've told you the story before of like, I walked out the door. The
This was
first,
not planned, okay?
right.
For we didn't plan this.
I'm at an OKR meeting and nobody
It's
even
great.
asked the opinions. No, like it was just this
Wow.
is what we're doing. This is, and I just
Yeah.
knew that I no longer had a position or a role to play anymore in those, right?
Yeah.
So like my main objectives, and again, I still do that to this day. I still give because
Yeah.
I am still the CEO of the company. I have to
Right.
give those vision. I have to,
Of
but
course.
I don't tell people how to do it, and I don't. To be honest with you, I don't want like if I wanted to make myself very busy, I'd go in and try and figure
Yeah,
out
you
what.
just go start running work. Yeah, for
But
sure.
the results are even worse when you do that
Right.
because now you're forcing yourself to wear multiple hats,
Right.
to be an executive salesperson or be an
Right.
executive, manager, to be
Right.
executive project manager. I'm not those things. I
Well,
can't be
and
all of
under,
those things. I
yeah.
can't be great
Yeah.
at them all,
Right.
right?
Right. Yeah. No,
So
I
again,
think,
this is where this kind of thing is it's just critical, right?
yeah. So I think, again, so just to kind of like, so to bring it, like, to boil it down a little bit. So it's, oh, first of all, it's okay to feel overwhelmed when it comes to planning.
Uh, for sure.
It's normal.
Absolutely.
Okay, if
Right.
you're feeling, if you're in, if especially if you're an exterior, like you work on the outside and
Mhm.
you're in the northern half of, like of North America, like it's okay. Like
Mhm.
you should feel overwhelmed. If you don't feel overwhelmed, that's unusual. If you don't feel that, so first of
Right.
all, it's okay. You have everybody's permission. It's normal. And again, I like planning, and I always feel overwhelmed. Okay, so and I think you're the same. So number one, it's okay to feel overwhelmed. Number two, like it's okay not to have all of the answers.
Yep.
You don't have to know exactly what sale number, like how many contracts you should do, or how many contracts it's going to take. Like if you don't know those things exactly, that's okay too,
Mhm.
because you didn't become a great Sparky or a great plumber or a great mason or a great roofer because of your accounting skills.
Right.
You became great at that stuff because either one, you did the work, like you were on the tools, or two, you could sell the shit out of it.
Right.
Generally speaking, in our trade. Okay. So it's okay, right? Don't beat yourself up. Don't feel like, oh my God, I should know how to do these things. Now, what's not okay is knowing, right? Staying in overwhelm and then staying in a place where you don't do anything.
And
Or
what's not
you
okay
do the same thing that you've
is
done.
pushing that on your team.
Right.
Yeah.
And then blaming, yeah, and then blaming your people, like why you didn't you didn't do this, why did you do that? What are we doing
Yeah.
here? Why did you make that
Don't be
decision?
a victim. You're not a
Or
victim.
a contractor that I know very well, he was sort of passive aggressive. What he would do, and this was almost worse than like screaming at your men. What he would do is he would walk onto the job site and he would go around, and then things that weren't in the scope of work, he'd be like, oh, wait, you need to do this, or we need to do this. And he wouldn't write change orders for it. And
Mm.
the men are just like, I watched this and they were so, you could just see like their
Morale drop.
energy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, what the fuck are you doing, dude?
Hmm.
Like, could you be any more stupid?
Right.
So, so it's okay not to know what to do or what the number is. It's okay not to know how to do it because you can, right? And of course, that's why you built the tool to take people through, like, paint by numbers. Okay, start here, and then you can, and then work with your team. And by the way, shameless plug, if you don't know how to do that, like, we have a lot of we can
We
offer
will
there.
help you get those things in. And
Yeah.
that's, again, I use this in every offer that we make. So anything that we look at solving a problem in anyone's business.
Explain
Yeah,
that, Jay. Explain
absolutely.
what you mean by that, please.
So when I give a proposal to a client to help them fix a piece of, the puzzle in their business, it always starts with OKR. So what is my objective? And I'm getting clear with the client. What is it exactly you want to solve? And I get them right on it. And then I demonstrate to them how my team uses those things. So the outcome is what they want. They don't, by me putting in like, I'm going to do this, this, and this is going to give you your objective. I'm showing them. And then as they get involved in these projects, the hope here is that they start to apply it to fixing other things, right? So as a consultant, I can't go in. I would get overwhelmed too if I have to go into business, and we work with some big businesses, and I have to look at, okay, what,
like, the whole thing, fix the whole thing.
Right. Well, I can't do that. So I'm not, and nor would I, because you can destabilize companies very quickly. So you have to pick the areas where you can get a measurable result. Well, the only way you can do that is strategically thinking. And I use the same process. I use it for my own life. Like, I use objectives in my own life as an individual. All right. My objectives and what needs to happen. Like, if you just think about it in that way and writing it down and getting it out of your head, you are going to be amazed at the outcome. So a good example of this is I write my objectives at the same time I do with all my business. Every quarter, every 3 months, I look back, I reflect, hey, what went on? But I'll tell you, I usually throw those objectives in my desk, in my notepad, right? And I probably don't look at them the rest of the quarter. And then at the end of the quarter, I open it up and I go, wow, I nailed it, right? Because I've gotten it's been delivered to my head. Now, I don't suggest that's what you do, but that's what has worked for me for a long time. And almost always I achieve those objectives. The same exact principles. You want an organized, you want a high leadership role, you want to attract A players, you want to bring in, high caliber people. Okay. Get out of the way. We know, right? You control the vision of the company. Get out of the way. If you need to wear one hat, that would be your place on the objectives, key results. But it keeps everybody, again, communicating in line. There's no questions of what we need to do, how we need to do this. And it removes you from having to be task-based. That is the worst kind of leadership you can have, because it takes all your time. And if you're not there, what happens? Nothing. So if you're wondering why production drops, like, if you're wondering why, goals don't get met, it's because you weren't there. You weren't there to supervise. How many of you guys are sitting there going, like, my team doesn't do anything when I'm not there?
Can't take an early, can't take a long weekend.
There's no accountability. These are all symptoms of you not having a system of leadership in place. And you don't need, again, I want to make sure I emphasize this. This is true leadership when you can implement something like this, but you don't need to be a good leader to follow the rules of the structure of leadership.
That's right.
Okay. So if you don't feel you're a good leader and you suffer in that area, that's fine.
That's okay. Yeah.
You can leverage somebody else who is a great leader and has those skills. And now they come in, and that's, again, everybody's aligned, and we're enforcing things as a team versus an individual or individuals.
Right. And the person goes, well, I don't have the money to do that. Well, if you work the plan, you will.
That's right.
I don't have the money to hire a leader. Yeah. But if you make a lot of money, you can. That's the thing. You don't have it today, but if you do this thing, you'll be surprised.
That's right. And again, this is a difference between doers and non-doers, right? Like, a doer is going to get it done no matter what. All right.
Yeah.
A non-doer that you don't want to have on your team, and that maybe taking up space or just, air, it's going to be blatantly obvious. Right. So again, we've talked about this for a while now. Holy.
So to kind of wrap it up, well, we came on, sorry, we were a little late today, folks. Okay. So, all right. To put a bow on this, planning is hard. Neither of us is saying planning is easy, because it's hard for us, and I think both of us are actually pretty good at it. So planning is hard. Number one. Number two, it's also, you don't have to know where to start. If you don't know where to start, that's where we actually have a lot to add. And we don't come in and like, we don't come in and just, and take over, right? We actually
Nope.
show, like, the folks that are working with us, we're showing them how to do this. And to your point, like, we're not changing anybody. We're just
Nope.
helping them like run a more profitable, easier business. Because when,
right.
to your point, it is hard when you're doing everything and you're the guy or you're the girl. That is exhausting. And it's, I mean, it's a trap, because if you're
It's a
actually
hamster wheel.
growing, if you're growing and you're doing everything like that, forget it.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of value to bring with that. We do have this resource available too, right, Jay?
Mhm.
Is
Yeah,
it
we're
on the
in the Facebook group.
Yeah.
Just reach out to us. No matter what channel you're on, we'll share it with you. So great resource, easy to navigate, and again, keep it simple, guys. Like, you
Yeah.
don't have to make this complicated or difficult. And there's a lot more layers you can add to it later. But for any company, and I've done this across the board in all types of settings, over 100 companies, I'd say probably, this year alone, where we've implemented this system, and it's the first place we start. Okay, because when people aren't aligned and don't know what's going on, what happens? Right? Our emotions take over.
Yeah.
Our micromanagement takes over. We start to
Right.
panic. We
Yeah, we
can't
just go
manage the
back to what we
emotions. That's
know.
right.
Right.
And then we just go
Right.
back to our same old habits, and we call it a loss. We don't let that happen, right? This is the way to really, get outside of that trap. And again, it's simple enough. Everybody can do it. If you're doing it, if you're just one man in a truck doing your thing, or you had two guys, you can do this at a micro level that is going to be extremely effective. Nobody can lose from this, right? If you're running a full-fledged team and you're having a lot of these symptoms that we've been describing, again, implement something like this and you're going to see a world of difference. Almost the first 3 months will be difficult, but by the second, third round, you will see a exponential change in everything. There's not a place it doesn't touch.
Yeah, and I was just my final thought is, I know this because I did this. I started planning. I got better at the planning, and then I started really planning and like going through the business, and then giving people, like, I followed this model. And again, this was part of how I was able to take a company that was, on paper insolvent, and turn it into a company that has now actually been able to sell itself, successfully complete a sale. So, like, this stuff it is real and it works. And, and again, it doesn't have to be so hard. And that's why Jay created this tool to make it easier. It's not easy, to make it easier, and something that, again, obviously, if the owner gets a win, but then everybody gets a win, because everybody gets to participate. So, so if you comment, or if you're in our group already and you're watching this and you don't have it, comment, and we'll get it to you. If you're outside of the group and watching this on one of the other channels, again, comment, and we'll get you into the group and get you the resource. So thanks everybody for being with us on our first live stream of 2024. We're here every Friday. If you're seeing this and you just want to get into the group, you want to be a part of our exclusive community, again, there's going to be a link. Hit that link to join the group or comment. And love to have you be a part of this thing that we're doing. It's pretty special. So thanks again for being with us. We're here next Friday at 3 p.m. and the next Friday at 3 p.m. And so we'll see you again next week.